I spent weeks searching online for the best butterscotch pie recipe I could find. My great-grandmother was joining us for Thanksgiving dinner, and I wanted to make the pie in her honor. Granny Marie had spent the past several months in a nursing home because of a fall that had left her with a fractured hip and had left my grandmother, her daughter, and caregiver at a breaking point. The last time I had visited Granny in the nursing home, the nursing staff had left the television on the Food Network. As we talked, Granny motioned toward the TV. "What's he a-doing?" "He's making biscuits, Granny." "Biscuits? Well, them's the leastest biscuits I've ever seen." That was Granny, matter of fact, and as we say in Appalachia, just natural. Granny Marie's dementia was progressing rapidly, and at the time of the hip fracture, my grandmother was increasingly unable to cope with the demands of being a family caregiver, particularly because of her own health issues. My grandmother had put her own health on hold to take care of her mother because taking care of family was just what you did. A good measure of my passion for caregiving comes from spending a great deal of time with my grandmothers and many summers in Granny Marie's care. Born in 1910, she had spent her life keeping house and raising a large family. From her, I learned our family history and witnessed perseverance, not only in the way that she navigated her world, but also in the stories she told. Caregiving was her area of expertise, and food was a way in which she carried out that task. And pies, especially butterscotch pie with thick meringue, featured among the many dishes that she provided generations of my family. So if she was coming to dinner, I wanted her to have the best butterscotch cream pie I could make. It had been several weeks since I had spent time with Granny, and I was looking forward to seeing her and having her enjoy the pie I had made just for her. But the woman who was pushed into the dining room in a wheelchair that Thursday in November was not the Granny I knew. And owing to the progression of her disease, I was a complete stranger to her. During dinner, I sat across the dining room table and watched her as she sat in silence, looking lost, bewildered, and angry to be thrust into a large gathering of people she didn't recognize. She recoiled from my touch because in that moment she didn't know me at all. And in that moment, those summer memories were inaccessible to her, despite being forefront in my mind. And the pie, well, the pie went uneaten. In fact, much of the food on Granny Marie's plate went uneaten that day. What I had planned, my perfect Martha Stewart expectations, didn't materialize and were replaced by a greater sense of loss. Our matriarch was disappearing right in front of us, and my family and I were struggling to cope with it all. More than a decade later, this experience of witnessing my great-grandmother living with dementia and the ways in which my family dealt with this process drives my research program. And I'm fortunate to work with amazing scholars from across the country and around the world in these efforts. Just last week, many of them were here at UTK for a research meeting and conference to share their expertise with the community. I spend my days wearing my thinking cap and working on strategies and tools for symptom management and caregiver support in dementia, as well as exploring the impact providing care for a loved one with dementia can have on families. Together, my colleagues and I develop tools, design and test interventions, and explore social media data, all in an effort to support these families. My family's journey with this disease is part of the larger context of family caregiving, and this complicated process can often be heightened during holidays, particularly Thanksgiving, when issues around food and eating often take center stage. Apathy and other behavioral symptoms of distress leave families wondering what to do and how to make the holidays what they once were, at least in some small way. In my work, family caregivers share stories of their experiences, and caregivers in my research speak of all the ways that they offer their loved ones their best, as well as their search for meaning and support. Several quotes from caregivers stick in my mind, such as this one: "I haven't found anything because I'm looking for the answer and nobody has the answer." Through exploring their use of social media, I continue to learn more about how these families navigate the caregiving process and where there may be gaps for intervention. For example, blogs become tools for caregiving. A caregiver writes, "We sit down as a family each day and read the posts together and discuss if we want to change them or if we are comfortable with what they say." While my colleagues and I continue to search for solutions in our research, we recognize that families continue to face challenges. As one caregiver wrote, "There's very little of her left, and every so often we are graced with her old laugh or her old smile. In that instant, her entire persona changes and she even resembles the mother of the past." Yet these caregivers find strength through community, both in person and online. One caregiver blogger wrote the following: "These are the folks who hold the light for me so that I can see my way to a bit of peace. Sometimes I hold the light for them." While social media may be seen by some as a landscape of trolls, these caregivers find solace and support there. They pose questions like, what is the best way to sort of handle that? Whether it's okay to just say, well, you need to eat something, or to actually listen to her when she says she's not hungry. And those who have found themselves in similar situations respond with kindness, support, and resources because the theme of altruism runs throughout. But one basic concept stands out for me from my work with caregivers. As with so many areas in life, taking the time to approach someone living with dementia with compassion and dignity is key. When we do, we give ourselves permission to make mistakes and realize that one size does not fit all, because assumptions about what a loved one with dementia can or cannot do often lead to frustration. Perhaps had we taken the time as a family to discuss how we might incorporate Granny Marie into that Thanksgiving holiday in 2002 as more than merely a dinner guest, the results might have been different. At the very least, we would have been approaching the situation with a bit more compassion and offering her a lot more dignity, maintaining her personhood and her humanity. While it may sound simplistic and trite, dignity and compassion are the key components of dementia care, in my opinion. From research to practice to education, these ideals offer a paradigm for approaching families. It is easy to forget that behind complexity, there is always simplicity to be revealed, and inside simplicity, there is always complexity to be discovered. And while these concepts alone cannot solve all of the issues related to providing care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or dementia, I can think of no better place to start. Because sometimes the best answers to complicated questions are the most simple as pie.